Hello, everybody. I'm Zenith and welcome back to the Disney Debate, where Kat Mac and I talk about Disney products and Disney in general. How's it going today, Kat?
Oh, it's doing great. I have been having a bella notte night.
We just got done watching Lady and the Tramp, and I have to say this was a nostalgic romp because I definitely remember seeing Lady and the Tramp as a kid, and I don't remember too much about it, but what I do remember is very fond memories. What do you think seeing the film after all these years, Kat?
Um, I still love it. I mean, I watched it all the time when I was little. I mean, because I really liked, dog films, and this is like right up my alley. Now that I watch it, it's not as, it's a bit boring at parts, like not as entertaining as I found it as a kid, but for the most part, it does hold up really well. And
Mm.
and yeah, I mean, and the songs, like for some reason I thought there was a lot more songs in this movie, but apparently there isn't.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the score, there were a lot of songs produced in the background, but from what you get, only half the score is actually memorable, and we'll get into that later. Um, but what I remember of the film from my childhood is I remember the spaghetti scene where they're singing Bella Notte and, the dogs, falling in love with each other. And that's about it. I mean, I think I remembered the dog pound scene, but what you remember from this film is the Italians serving dog spaghetti, and that's what Disney plays up a lot. They don't really play up any, much more about the film. So going into this, I didn't really know exactly what to think. But I have to say, it's definitely a classic, but it's not as good as I remember it.
Yeah, that's the thing about this film is because like everyone remembers that scene so fondly with the dogs eating spaghetti, and it's like one of the most romantic images that some people think of. But that's really the only thing worth remembering about it, which is why that's probably the only thing that Disney actually puts out for it. Because the rest of it, it's kind of uneventful.
The thing about this is that it was adapted from a children's story called Happy Dan the Whistling Dog, which is a horrible title. I don't
Mhm.
even know how that got greenlit, but yeah, so originally a children's book, and it makes sense. It feels a little bit like Dumbo in a regard, because you can definitely see where each chapter would begin and end in the way they would create it. You have the chapter about Lady and how she's brought to the Darling family and how she grows up and dealing with the dog, and then now they're getting a baby. That's a new chapter. And so you can tell it's segmented, but at the same time, it doesn't have this rising conflict to it. It's not the most engaging children's book, I would probably have to say.
Yeah, definitely not. And now that I think about it, like this kind of reminds me of what we saw with Davy Crockett, where the parts of the film are obviously segmented. But with this, like, it wasn't. I don't think it was actually made for TV. I think it was supposed to be a full-length animated movie, but it feels a lot more segmented than Davy Crockett did.
It definitely feels like they tried to put in a lot to pad it out because there wasn't too much in the original story. Unfortunately, it just didn't have as much staying power. But let's go over these individual segments and talk about them, and then we can see where really the problem lies with this.
Yeah, definitely, because I do have a few gripes with certain things.
So the film opens up, and it's Christmas, and we see that Jim Deere gives his wife Darling. And the first problem is that their names are so bland.
Well, I think the reason for that is because again, this is supposed to be told from the dog's point of view, and you can pretty much assume that this is what like the dog is like seeing and hearing. I mean, this is the only things that the two call each other throughout the film. So I guess she just assumes that that's what their names are.
That's true, but then again, it keeps making me think of Peter Pan because their last name were Darling. So
True.
But anyway, so it opens up, and we have Jim giving his wife a puppy for Christmas, and they name her Lady because she looks like an adorable lady. I don't really get it, but it's somewhat simple.
Yeah, I guess, they think of her as a sophisticated lady because I guess they're sort of like aristocrats since they live in a rich neighborhood. So, I don't know. I guess it's just like a feminine term they just gave to her. But,
So it's them the first night with the puppy in the house, and they're trying to keep the puppy downstairs, but they eventually give in and let Lady sleep with them.
I thought
That's
that whole
the
scene...
first chapter.
I thought that whole scene was funny.
It was definitely a funny scene, yeah. Because you can definitely feel for them. It's just like they just want the puppy to go to bed, and they don't want to, they want to be strict masters and whatnot, but eventually they give in because the puppy's so persistent. So it was funny, but not much happens, and that's like the first chapter. And then we flash forward quite a few years, and it's them living with the dog.
Yeah, and it's just kind of it sort of turns into the life, the day in life of Lady the dog. It's pretty much just normality. She wakes up in the morning, chases a few birds, digs up some bones.
She chases off a rat. Remember that rat for later.
She talks to the other dogs in the neighborhood, then meets Jim Deer later on, and they race to the door, and he gives her a treat, and then they spend a nice evening by the fire.
Yeah, so that's like another chapter, and a lot of it is exposition and setup, but it doesn't feel natural. It feels like, oh, this is just a chapter of exposition, just setting up where everything goes, and we get a little bit of character interaction with the other two dogs, but for the most part, it's told without dialogue, and it's showcasing Lady. And I do like the fact that they use as little dialogue as possible, but at the same time, it's still exposition.
True. I mean, in a way, it's kind of a good thing, just setting up everything without there being any, unnecessary twists or any rushing or pacing issues and stuff. I mean, we get to see how things normally are before they, take a turn for the worst.
Yeah, I mean it's necessary. I feel it could have been done a little bit more naturally, but it is, again, it's like a chapter. So next up we have showcasing the tramp come in, and he warns them that, with a baby on the way, things are going to be different. Mark my words, once a baby comes into the house, everything changes. And so the next chapter is, how to deal with this new baby that's coming. And the problem is resolved pretty easily.
Yeah, they put a lot of build-up into that, 'cause it all starts off with Lady feeling sad because her daily routine has been disrupted because her owners are now treating her coldly because they're so focused on the new baby that they're expecting. And then you see as the months go by and they're prepping for the baby and everyone is getting excited and anxious and stuff. And then the baby finally gets here and nothing really changes. She goes to see the baby, they actually let her see the baby. And then they to give her a comforting pet saying, "Oh, don't worry, we love you." And then that's it. Conflict over.
I mean, yeah, it's set up like there's going to be something big happening, and it doesn't really have an impact as much as you would think. And so it seems like the person who wrote the original story is just like, okay, we have to find a way to switch this up again. So the parents are going away for the trip, and Aunt Sarah is watching over. But she doesn't like dogs. So instead of the baby being the thing that's driving the dog away, it's the aunt now. And she has these two Siamese cats who come in and destroy everything and blame it on the dog. And because Aunt Sarah doesn't like dogs, she goes to get a muzzle And when they try to put a muzzle on her, she runs away. And that's kind of the end of the chapter there. So the aunt drives the dog away. And Lady eventually finds herself chased by these big dogs who are also strays, and she's saved by the tramp. And so that plot point comes back into it. And so from a film that started off being mostly about the life of a dog, as seeing things from a dog's perspective, it's now turning into a love story as the Lady and the Tramp are slowly falling in love.
Yeah, that's kind of weird for me, because I mean, the whole setup of this is leading you to believe, oh, this is the life and day of a dog, and then she runs away, and she runs into this character that was previously introduced for like 5 minutes, and then disappears for like the remaining like half, and then all of a sudden he comes back, and hey, he's the love interest. It's like.
And so, like, he tries to show her that life as a tramp, is a lot easier. You don't have to tie yourself down to a family. It's much better. You get food from Italian people. And they have the Bella Nota scene. And, I mean, it is romantic, and it is set up well. And I have to agree that the spaghetti, the dogs eating the spaghetti scene is the best part of the film. It doesn't fit with a lot of the film is set up to be. It doesn't feel like this film was originally going to be a love story. And it's different from Bambi because the love portion was a natural part of it. It was more about the life of the deer and everything that came with it. This isn't really about the life of a dog.
Yeah, it seems like, they were going to make that the original story, but then, like, changed their minds and are thinking, like, we need, this story's too boring. We need something to liven it up a bit. Oh, I know. Let's make it a love story. Everyone loves a love story.
And I think if that didn't happen, we wouldn't remember Lady and the Tramp as much as we do.
True, but I mean, if they were going to make it that, they should have, like, at least done a rewrite of the beginning or something. Make it so that they met when they were puppies, but because of the lives that they were born into, they weren't really allowed to like play with each other that much or see each other that much. Then had to stay like separated for a while, but then they meet up later on, and that's when they fall in love.
It's not set up well.
Yeah, and really there's really no chemistry between them either. I mean, there's really nothing that they have in common. I mean, it's pretty much just he saves her and then, decides that, hey, while I have her here, I may as well just, show her around and everything and, maybe try to get some nookie later.
But you know why they did it that way? Because people like the underdog love story. Two people who are from different worlds want to be together. It's a staple. It's even Twilight is based on this premise. As bad as it is, that's why a lot of people get into it, is because forbidden love is a big thing.
True, but the thing is that, like, it never becomes an issue, though. Because I mean, like I said, the whole them meeting up together and falling in love was kind of an accident. And... Mm-hmm. But the thing is,
it's not like they ever prevented them from seeing each other. It's not like the Tramp was ever kicked out of the yard before. If Tramp had been kicked out from the beginning of the film, then we could kind of understand a little bit of it, and why they immediately go out to why he comes to a rescue. It doesn't seem like there's ever an issue in terms of this relationship. There's no conflict, at least in this portion. It's just, okay, we're in love now, and it's a little bit better than I just met you and I love you, but at the same time, they'd only met twice, so.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, the whole thing is that, there's supposed to be two dogs in two different worlds who fall in love and then, want to be together after that. But the thing is, no one ever, like, tries to stop them from, like, being together, and there's no opportunity that's brought up to really like present that. I mean, after they spend a night together, and she wants to go back home, because she's still loyal to her masters. Along the way, she ends up getting captured and sent to the pound, and it's there that she learns about his past of all the girl dogs that he's dated before her, and then she makes the decision to not see him again.
And it's like none of the conflict happened while they were together, and none of it seemed like a struggle. It's like, okay, they leave, then something else has to happen. We're just jumping from plot point to plot point to get to the end of these chapters. And it just doesn't seem like the best writing to me.
Yeah, it's like this whole movie felt a bit rewritey. Like, they started writing this one story, and then ran out of ideas, so they jump over to this different plot story, worked on it, again ran out of ideas, then jumped on to something else, and then that they had an idea for something later on, and then decided, hey, you reference this thing before, but,
especially because a lot of these side characters only appear for one scene. The two dogs that we see in the beginning of the end of the film, they only have two scenes. In the next chapter, when she goes to the dog pound, she sees some dogs there. They're only there for that one scene and a little bit of the end.
Yeah, they were shown earlier, like two of the dogs at least, but they were kind of just there just to showcase that Tramp is not just a worthless mangy dog who lives on the streets. He actually does help other dogs when they're in danger.
And it astounds me though that two of these dogs get captured again.
Yeah.
Like, the first time you see them, Peg and Bull, these two dogs, they're in the dog pound vehicle, and they're about to be captured, and you see the guy from the dog pound putting up posters of Tramp like he's a wanted criminal, and he gets them out. The next time you see them, they're in the dog pound when Lady arrives. Like, I understand that they don't have owners, but how many times are they going to get captured? I believe it was only like a day in between or something like that.
Yeah, well, I don't think so. I think this because the first time it happened, it was around when Jim Deere and Darling were expecting their baby, and then the next time we see him, it's been probably about a month or so since he was born. So it was a long lapse of time.
It strikes me as funny though that these two dogs get captured so easily.
Mhm. And oh my god, that that dog pound scene. Oh my god.
It's probably one of the saddest scenes in the film. You have the dogs all singing a song and being sad, and we're in a dog pound, and Lady saying how this is the most horrible place ever, and it's blues music, for God's sake. It's really sad.
That's the weird thing, though, is like how drastically the tone of that place changes during that scene. Because the first time you see the pound, it's the dogs basically howling this like sort of blues tune, and just putting on their most pathetic stray doggy look that they can. You see close-ups of little doggies behind bars crying and whimpering and everything, and you can't help but think of those ASPCA commercials of the dogs that were abused and everything. Then Lady comes in, and the other dogs talk to her, and then all of a sudden that dog Peg sings a musical number, and suddenly,
which is much more upbeat.
And suddenly, suddenly the whole tone of the place is upbeat, and everyone's like singing along with her, having a good time. Everyone's jamming along, and then the next scene, suddenly you hear a door open, and they're like, "Oh, there goes a dog to be put to sleep." It's like, what tone are we going for with this place?
Yeah, it definitely has a very different feel tonally, and it keeps switching around with us. And then at the end, after she's released from the dog pound, she talks to Tramp. She's like, "I don't want to see you again because you're a tramp and you've been with all these women, and what am I to you?" But then another conflict happens out of nowhere. The rat comes back. the rat that they set up from the very beginning of the film, like the first 5 minutes, and it's back, and it comes into the baby's room.
Oh, God.
And now the lady's outside in the doghouse because Aunt Sarah is still there, and she still doesn't like dogs. And so she gets the help of Tramp to stop the rat. But then the Tramp gets in trouble because they accidentally knocked over the crib while, fighting the rat because, they don't want the rat biting the baby. And then in the last 5 minutes, everything's solved because they find the parents come back, they find the rat, and they realize, oh yeah, the dog was just trying to save the baby. So.
Yeah, even when I was a kid, I was always terrified of that scene because, I mean, I'm not gonna say I'm not a rat person because I have owned rodents before, like gerbils and hamsters and everything. But seeing a rat that looks like it came out of the New York subway, slinking its way into a baby's room, just oh God, it sends shiver up my spine. And especially that scene where the Tramp comes in and then he starts fighting with the rat, and he has his eyes turn like a hellish red, and you feel like it's a battle between like two demons. It's just so freaking scary.
Well, I have to say it was well animated and it was a good climax, but it definitely felt rushed in terms of the resolution because this is the last 10 minutes of the film. Like, the climax happens in the last 10 minutes, the rat comes in, and he's going off to the pound again, and so, the parents come in, they have to rush to save him, and they have the dogs chasing after it. It seems like it was packed in at the last minute, and it could have been spread out a little bit.
I guess so. I mean, I'm not sure how exactly you could do that, though. Like, I guess maybe show the rat try to, invade their property a few times, but I think the less you saw the rat, the better, because that's what made him, more scary. Because from what I read, that they actually were going to make the rat more of a comedic character. Because, again, this is one of those instances where, pretty much all the animals in this universe talk, except for, the ones that are sort of villainified, like the rat.
Actually, the only people we saw the only animals we saw in this film that can talk are dogs.
Well, dogs and that beaver and...
Oh, yeah, the beaver. That was the only other animal that we saw talk.
Yeah, but I think it's pretty much implied, though, that all the animals can, for the most part, communicate with each other. But then, like I said, as is tradition in a lot of these animated talking animal movies, you have this beastly, scary-looking rat that, doesn't talk and, is mostly, there just to terrify people just by the pure image of it. And I actually find this pretty ironic given the direction that Disney films are going later, because a lot of movies they made later on feature mice who talk, mice and rats, and that they're basically on the same intelligent level as humans, and it's the rest of the animals, the dogs, the cats, and whatnot, who can't talk. So I find this, kind of ironic.
I will say, though, that the rat as a villain was pretty intimidating, but I think the big major problem I had with this film was there was no real central conflict, no real central villain.
Yeah, there really wasn't. I mean, the most conflict you had was, Lady wasn't being treated the same as she was before her masters were expecting a baby, and she was left with a woman who doesn't like dogs. That was, the biggest conflict up until the rat invades the baby's room.
Because up until that point, there was conflict that was implied or, supposed to happen, but it didn't really happen until that point.
Yeah, I mean, plus they also had, was it the dog catcher going around capturing all the stray dogs, but...
That was solved in 5 seconds by Tramp, to show that he was resourceful.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to set up your character, but they do it like a superhero movie. Like, they set him up in the first 5 minutes, oh, he's good, this is what he can do, instead of, showcasing that there's an actual conflict.
True. And And it doesn't work when Lady gets captured because, we all know that she has a collar and license, so obviously she's going to get out of it scot-free, so there's really no danger for her there.
So even though she's captured, that really didn't hold weight to it. It didn't hold any permanent effect to it.
Yeah, I mean, the only real, like, general tension that the movie had was at the very end when Tramp is being taken away by the dog catcher to the pound where we know that he's going to be put to sleep.
And when he's fighting the rat, because, who knows where that rat's been.
Yeah, true. But at least then, like, you kind of expected that, Tramp would defeat the rat, though. But in this case, you have the dog being carted off to be put to death, and there's really no way to convey that he's innocent. I mean, like, thank God that, the owners kind of were smart enough to put two and two together, to see the dead rat in the room and to see that their dog obviously wasn't there to attack the baby. Otherwise, Tramp probably would have been screwed.
Well, I mean, they know their dog's better than that, and they, because they've been with their dog for how long, and it makes sense from that standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, even then, they see the rat. I mean, it kind of doesn't explain why there's, like, a stray dog in their house.
Yeah, that's true, and it doesn't explain why they adopt the dog at the end, but I guess, it's because they believe he saved the kid's life.
That, and, they probably did know that he was going to be put to death if he didn't get any owners.
But, so, yeah, that's the story of Lady and the Tramp. It's a bit disjointed, and a lot of it feels like it could have benefited from doing the opposite of what Dumbo did. I mean, Dumbo took chapter by chapter, and it worked because it was a short film. Everything was there for a reason. This felt a little bit, a lot of it felt like padding.
Yeah, it kind of did. I mean, because like we mentioned, the big conflict for the first part was the baby being born, and then the conflict became the dogs fell in love, but were from two different worlds, and then the conflict became a rat tried to eat a baby, and then the dog was being punished in its place. So
the conflict is all over the place. It really could have benefited from a lot of, central conflict or central writing, something like that,
There's also the issue of the characters.
Yeah, Lady doesn't really have a character.
She really doesn't. I mean, she's just, a nice young dog, who happened to be raised in an aristocratic environment. And
in fact, she barely has any lines in this film.
She really doesn't. I mean, a lot of her scenes are actually spent either silent or with her barking. And in fact, after the rat comes in to sneak into the house, her last line is go through the door on the porch, and then we never hear her speak again. That's it for her. I mean, her character is still there in the fact that she's at heart still a young puppy, but at the same time, she's still discovering things. She sort of grows up, gains a sort of like protective nature in terms of the baby, and is exposed to this whole new world, beyond the fence. But she doesn't really have an arc or anything where her character dramatically changes. She just kind of teeters off.
Yeah, she stays the same throughout the most of the film. And even the whole stuff with the tramp where he's trying to make her change, he doesn't make her change. She falls in love with the dog, and that's that. She's always been the same. She was raised this way. She stays this way. And so she's kind of a boring character, if you can call her a character.
Yeah, and then there's Tramp, and he considerably has a lot more personality, and apparently he's really good at doing voices too.
Yeah, he's a lot of what makes this film really good, and I can kind of understand that, seeing as the film was based on a book about this dog in particular, Happy Dan or whatever he was supposed to be called. And so you can understand why he has a little bit more personality to him. At the same time, I like him just so much more than Lady, because Lady's all this prim and proper. She doesn't really do anything wrong. She doesn't try anything that's, outside the box. She's a goody-good, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Where the tramp is just out for himself. He's out for fun. He's out, he has understandable motivations because, anyone in that position can understand why he's doing what he's doing. He's just trying to survive. He's having fun, and that's all that matters to him.
Mm-hmm. And there are times where they try to make him out to be sort of a jerk, and the whole big reveal with the fact that, he had been with other girl dogs besides Lady, I felt was kind of a bit forced. Because,
We kind of knew that.
Yeah, he's a freaking dog. Dogs, assuming that they're not neutered, they're going to go around and, bone whatever thing has a hole in it. So.
And it's just like, I can understand why, having a bunch of girlfriends at one point would be cause for concern, but she raised the alarm way too fast. I'm kind of thinking, like, in any normal situation, I would just be like, okay, well, are you with any of them now?
I think another thing also is that what the other dogs in the pound were kind of implying is the fact that, girls are kind of his kryptonite, and that whenever he gets involved with a female dog, he tends to get careless, and then bad things happen, hence, why she ended up in the pound. So...
But that wasn't his fault. She was stupid.
It was and it wasn't. He could have easily just, brought her straight home, but he had to stop and, chase chickens, thus getting a farmer to chase them with his shotgun and then going in, past the dog catcher. Don't get me wrong, it's not his fault she got captured, but at the same time, he shouldn't have been so careless, especially, with her, trailing behind him by at least 10 feet.
So, yeah, Tramp is really where this film shines. He's a lovable rascal.
Mm-hmm.
And he does a lot of really cool accents and impressions. He's far more interesting than Lady is, I have to say.
Definitely. And for the rest of the characters, they're mostly just, side characters who cameo once or twice throughout the film. The most consistent characters we have is Jim, Dear, and Darling, but they're kind of the generic nice couple. You
barely see them, and when you do, you see them from the dog's perspective, which is nice. I like that you don't actually fully see them.
Yeah, but at the same time, again, they're just sort of there just to be the owners. There's nothing else special to note about them.
They're a lot like window dressing, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you have the two other dogs, Jock and Trusty. They're kind of there just to be the mentor to Lady, because they're older dogs who have more experience than her and are kind of there to explain the things that she doesn't understand.
And they're also comic relief.
In a way, yeah, because you have Jock, who's a lovable, angry Scottish Terrier, and Trusty, who's kind of like a senile old bloodhound, and
well, he's lost his scent. He's lost his sense of smell, and I thought that was
somehow.
A funny joke.
I don't see how that's possible though, especially for a bloodhound. But whatever,
It works for what it is, and I thought it worked well with the film.
Yeah, and at least they got a chance to, sort of shine at the end, because, they're the ones who ultimately prevent Tramp from being put to sleep, because they actually physically chase down the carriage themselves and stop it. And then it kind of led to, this one scene where, you see Trusty stuck under the wheel of a carriage, and Disney does, its famous fake-out, where you think a character's dead, but then later on you found out they weren't. Yeah,
so you think that Trusty's dead, when he isn't, but... No, it's implied.
But I'm surprised though, because I guess maybe they did intend to kill him off, but then they changed their minds last minute because it's wait, we can't end this on a sad note.
So surprisingly, we don't have a Disney death to add to the count in this film. The rat doesn't die, so that
The rat dies.
Oh, the rat does die?
Yeah, remember, but.
Oh, yeah, the thing is, it's shown off-screen.
Yeah, and plus I wouldn't really count him as a character. He's just sort of like, a danger that was taken care of.
Yeah, he's a villain death, but if you can call him a villain because he wasn't in a lot of the film.
hmm Yeah, other than that, though, I don't think there's any other deaths or anything else. I mean, we have mostly a lot of, like I said, one-note characters. Like, we have Aunt Sarah, who's there just to be a bitch. We have the Pound Dogs, who are there just, to look sad and pathetic and then put doubts in Lady's head about the tramp. And then we
There's
have...
the Siamese cats who appear for a scene, they wreck stuff, and then they're gone for the entire film. They don't even come again at the end as, like, villains.
Yeah, that scene is so baffling to me now that I watch it, because they are only there for that scene where they sing that song. Like, you don't see him again when Lady comes back to the house. You don't see him, at the end of the film. Like, there's no evidence to suggest that they ever existed.
And
They...
it's just, why were they introduced if they're not going to be villains? Because they were douchebags, certainly, but they aren't villains.
Yeah, and even worse, they're stereotypical borderline racist villains.
Yeah, this is the only really big point in terms of stereotypes. Like, they were extreme Asian racial stereotypes, and that's a big problem.
Yeah, because like I'm just watching this now and I'm thinking, wow, I feel so uncomfortable.
Yeah,
Because like
that entire scene, like, yes, the song is catchy, but it's only catchy because it gets stuck in your head. It's not a good song, and it's also racist.
yeah, I mean the only purpose that scene serves is to get Lady in trouble with Aunt Sarah, thus prompting her to bring her to the muzzle store where she goes crazy and runs away. That's pretty much there. I mean, she could have done like that. You could have like done anything else. Just had it where she accidentally knocked over something or whatever, and then gotten blamed for it. So, because like honestly, it made no sense for them to be there. And
Yeah, they have no real purpose, and they're just better skipped over. I didn't get the appeal of them, because they're also, advancing the stereotypes that cats are evil, which a lot of films do. You might say, what's the problem with being prejudiced against cats? Well, it's still a prejudice.
yeah, because I mean, you're free to not like cats, you're free to not like dogs, but when you paint out like one particular species as like always being evil just because that a negative term is associated with their species, that's kind of messed up.
I mean, cats in many literature, in a lot of literature, have been villainized and demonized for a long time, but this is just, I don't know. I felt uncomfortable watching this scene.
Well, I was gonna say that's really something, especially saying because this film is full of stereotypes, like all from like background characters. I mean, aside from the Siamese cats, you also have an angry Irish cop. You have these two Italian restaurant owners, and you have these dogs. One who is like sort of like a wolfhound or something, and he's Russian, and he talks about the Cossacks, and then a little Chihuahua who talks in a Spanish accent, and has a sister with like 10 names.
Yeah. Now, one thing I raised about the fact of the stereotypes of the dogs is the fact can you really call it a stereotype if they're dogs?
Um, I mean, I kind of do just because, like, they kind of elaborate on it. Because I mean, let's take the Irish cop for instance. He's big, he's fat, he has ginger hair, he has like a pink nose indicating that he's drunk, and he gets really angry at the first guy that pisses him off. So,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
so
but the thing is,
that's the stereotype of humans. Then you have the dogs, and like I said, their only like traits is you have like for instance, you have a bulldog, an English bulldog with a Cockney accent, you know, to show that he is English. You have a Russian wolfhound named Boris who has a Russian accent, and like I said, he talks in like broken English, and again, talks about how, how the tramp is going to have the Cossacks come take him away. And then,
at the same time, though, the only stereotype that I felt was offensive were the Siamese cats.
Yeah, it's like, so some of them, like, I don't think are, like, totally offensive. It's not like, it's not like their physical structures were changed to sort of, like, coincide with a stereotype of any particular species. It's just, again, that's, like, their only defining trait, though, is the fact that they are of this ethnicity.
Mm-hmm. That just goes to show that they're not even two-dimensional characters. But, I mean, for the Italian characters, I'm Italian myself. So I can say perfectly, I didn't really have a problem with that. I didn't have a problem with them, acting stereotypically Italian.
I didn't really either. I mean, if anything, I found it more hilarious.
I thought it was fun.
I especially love when Tony, the owner of the restaurant, is like pretending that he understands the dogs.
Yeah. What do you mean you understand the dog? He's so big to me.
And then, like, when he gets pissed off at the cook for making bones, he's like, "Joel, get back in the kitchen, or I'll break your face."
I break your face. It's a fun stereotype. It's not offensive. It's not trying to anger anybody out there. So I didn't really have a problem with it. I didn't really have a problem with the dogs, but the cats I did. I really had a big problem with that.
Yeah. Especially since, like in early movie and TV culture, Asians were usually villainified a lot. I mean, a good example. Watch the very first Batman series. He fights this Asian drug lord who's actually a white guy in yellow makeup.
Or look at the Scooby-Doo villain where they go to China. Yeah, that was pretty bad. But I mean, in this film, I only think that was the only really big racially insensitive part. And we faced stuff like this before with Disney in terms of what makes a red man red. It did have that sort of Peter Pan feel where it's just like, I would like this if it weren't for this one little bit,
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say this movie's just firmly a product of its time. Because, like, it's a cartoon. The purpose of cartoons is to sort of, like, elaborate on certain characters and sometimes certain ethnicities, and that's what they decided to do. I just wish that, they added... They gave some of the characters a little, more distinguishable personalities as opposed to this is their ethnic background, and that's all they are.
Yeah, I mean, other than Tramp, there isn't really any relatable characters or any like really big characters. Besides maybe Peg, who is. It seems like she was Tramp's previous lover or something like that. And she sings the song about how wonderful Tramp is, and she actually gets a lot of screen time. The rest of the dogs and the rest of the characters who are side characters, not so much.
Yeah, actually, I didn't really see the purpose of Peg that much. I mean, she kind of just shows up and sings. It's not she's not really the one to like. Reveal Tramp's past or anything. And she doesn't really indicate, aside in song, that, she had been with the Tramp before. So, but I just didn't really see much purpose in her character. I guess she's kind of there just to be, the sympathetic female of the group. And I guess just to give Peggy Lee a reason to sing some more.
So, let's see. Story was kind of disjointed. Characters were not very well developed, or just somewhat one-dimensional. I think the real reason we remember this film is the music.
Definitely.
And right from the very beginning, because the first song in the film is Bella Notte. It's kind of a choral version of it to set up the film. And it's this wonderful Italian song, and I just love it. I think this is the song of the film. This is the if you don't remember anything about the film, this is the song you remember about the film, and this is what really made it stick out. And they play it over the main titles first. And so right from the very beginning, you get a little bit invested in the film.
Hmm. In a way, I think that kind of creates false expectations, though. Because the song is basically a romance ballad. And it's played at the very beginning, indicating that, oh, this is a love story between two dogs. But the love story doesn't happen until about 2/3 of the way through the film.
Mm-hmm. But I think that's the one thing that they had to latch onto when they were actually editing this down.
Mm.
Because we have the main title song, Bella Notte, and we'll get back to that in a bit. And the second song is this Peace on Earth thing, and it's like it's trying to be this Christmas song. It's, because it's around Christmas time, but it's just so boring.
It is, and the singers, it sounds like it's being sung by a guy who got kicked in the balls. Because, he's trying to, sing in a soprano key, and he's doing just a terrible job of it.
I mean, if they had sung, Silent Night, or if they had sung, I don't know, just any other Christmas song that, that's recognizable, those aren't really licensed. Those are songs that, you grow up with. Everyone has a different rendition of it. It can't really own the rights to it. So I think they should have just put that in the film instead, and it would have been so much better. It
would have. I don't know. I guess they were just trying to do a transitional song or something, but yeah, it did not work at all.
And after that, there's really no songs for a lot of the first part of the film, which kind of adds to, the meandering of it at points, until there's this song. It's called What is a Baby, and it's basically internal thoughts of Lady, and she's wondering, what a baby is, and she's not really singing it.
Yeah, she's kind of just, singing it, saying it in rhythm.
It's the song in The Lion King where everyone's just Scar isn't really singing? It's a little bit more like that, only less singing.
Yeah, it's I'm surprised that they even count it as a song, because she's kind of singing it the way that, someone who's maybe impatiently waiting in line for something is like, I'm waiting in line, waiting for my coffee, something like that. It's not really an actual song, but it does lead up to a real song, though.
Which is La La Lu, which it's a baby lullaby, and it's sung by Darling, and I thought it was a bit better than the other two songs. I mean, it's not memorable, it's not as standoutable, but I did enjoy hearing it.
I did too, and I actually thought it was rather sweet, because it kind of does symbolize the moment where the family does become whole. Because up to that point, the main conflict was that Lady felt like she was sort of losing her masters, because they were so wrapped up in all the baby excitement that they kind of forgot about her. And then she comes in, and then you see Darling singing this sweet lullaby to her newborn son. And if they were like any other, parents or people, they would probably shoo her away as soon as she entered the room. But they let her come in, and then they even lift her up towards the crib to see, to actually see the baby. And it's the first time we're seeing the baby as well. And everyone's just so happy just being together, and they both, pet her behind the ears, saying that, yes, we still love you, don't worry. And I actually found it a really tender moment.
I think it was a nice scene, and I think the song itself really works into this moment. It may not be the most memorable song in the film, but, more so than the other two songs that we talked about before, this actually really fits with the moment. And so I thought it worked really well. Then we have the Siamese Cat song.
Blech.
And the less we say about that, the better. Again, it's a stereotypical, racially prejudiced song They're playing the Chinese symbols, and it really doesn't have much to it. It's just, we are Siamese if you please. We are Siamese if you don't please. And then the cat's meowing. There's nothing to this song. And then they segue into the second part where they just say, oh, what's this dog doing? And, you know, how can we mess up this house? It's just basically, the problem with it is the problem with the cats themselves.
Yeah, yeah, this song, like, the only words I ever remembered was, "We are Siamese if you don't please." I mean, the lyrics are kind of messed up enough as it is, but, like, the rest of the lyrics I can barely understand, you know, because of the cat's accent.
Yeah, the less we say about it, the better.
Mm-hmm.
But then we go back to Bella Notte, which, you know, the full song it's this wonderful romantic ballad, and it's sung with accordions, and I don't know how to put this in words. It works. It just works so well with the scene. It's romantic. You have the dogs eating spaghetti while they're singing. These restaurant owners are very good to their dogs. They're singing for them, and they're giving them spaghetti to eat.
I know, seriously. Like, I'm thinking, like, wow, this must be a slow day for their restaurant or something. And because, like, they go all out, you know, they set up an actual table for the dogs with candles and give them a menu to read off of, even though I'm pretty sure dogs can't read. And, you know, they come out playing the accordions and everything. And at one point I'm thinking, wow, I hope to God they didn't put any garlic or onions in that sauce. Otherwise they're going to end up with some dead dogs later. But I really like that song because it gives, you know, because the whole thing with Lady and the Tramp, like I said before, is that they lack chemistry, if only because Lady's such a bland character and has really nothing in common with the Tramp. With this, it seems like they actually do have something there, like, you know, a spark, and that they just needed, like, the right setting to bring them together. And that's kind of what the scene does. So, and you know what the ironic thing is? From what I read, the animators were originally going to cut this scene because they actually thought that they kind of thought that, you know, seeing two dogs eating spaghetti would look too silly.
Yeah. And it's the most memorable scene of the film. Like I said before, everything about it is symbolic for romance. In our culture today, when we think about Disney and romance, one of the first things we look to is the two dogs nudging meatballs toward each other and eating spaghetti. And this has been parodied many times in cinema. So yes, I think it just works.
Seriously, that's real love there when a person is actually willing to give up their meatball to someone else. I wouldn't do that.
My meatball.
My meatball. I love my meatballs.
And the only other song in the film that's not a reprise is "He's a Tramp," and that's also a good song. I think that's the second best in the film. It's sung by Peg, and she's just talking about, all about how wonderful the Tramp is, and, you know, what kind of person he is. And it's upbeat, and it's fun, and she's being all sexified, which is kind of weird because she's a dog, but it's a fun song.
It is. Like I said, it's kind of weird that it comes out of nowhere though, and it conflicts greatly with the atmosphere they're trying to portray for the Pound. But it's still a memorable song. I mean, I remember it fondly from when I was a kid. So and heck, you know, it's Peggy Lee, and she has a wonderful voice. So it's not like you know, an annoying song that comes out of nowhere, and it was unbearable to listen to.
We should say though that Peggy Lee was the person who was singing all these songs. She sung the song. She sung "He's a Tramp," "La La Lou," the Siamese Cat songs, and "What Is a Baby." She didn't sing "Bella Notte." That was by someone else, but. She wrote the songs with Sonny Burke, and she assisted with the score as well, and she was a really big force behind the film.
Yeah, so it's understandable why, she would have, why she would be in this so much. I mean, she wrote the freaking thing, so she kind of deserves, to have her voice heard. And like I said, it's wonderful. They actually do have in the special edition, they do have a scene which shows both, shows both her singing and then, the movie going on at the same time. So you can, like, see her, how much energy she puts into it, and she's a very lovely lady too.
Yeah, you can see where they got the Peg sexy dancing from. It's an inspirational type thing from Peggy Lee herself. So
It's also really funny because, well, they cut between her singing and the other voice actors who are kind of doing the dog barkings and stuff, and it's funny just to see grown men barking like dogs.
So again, I don't think the strength of this film is the story.
Mm-mm.
I don't think the strength of this film is the characters. From the story and the characters, there are good points. There are really good points, but as a whole, it just doesn't work as well as it should. But I think the music, specifically the Bella Nota scene at the restaurant, is what makes this film a classic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you take any film lover and, ask them about the scene, they'll remember it. They know about the scene, and it made film history. It's a scene that will live down in the centuries. I don't think the rest of the film is quite as good, unfortunately.
Yeah, it really isn't. I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of people, if they saw it now, would probably consider it to be very boring and kind of tedious at parts. Because again, there's really the conflicts that are brought up are, solved so fast, and there's really like nothing consistent, because it jumps between so many plot points. But I think that, personally, in my opinion, they should have just flat out made this a romance story. Just have it be about both Lady and the Tramp. Them when they were puppies, them growing up in the surroundings that they were in, how they became who they were, and then how they get together and fall in love, and then bring in a conflict that, kind of forces them apart, but then they find a way to get back together. I think the film would have been a lot better if they just focused on that instead of going through, a dog's perspective and then just writing whatever from there. So, But that's just my opinion, though. But other than that, I won't deny, though, like, this film is classic. It has really good animation, really good songs, and it's a great romance story. When you just focus on the romance part of it.
Mm-hmm. I have to agree. Overall, I think the romance is what works about the film, and I think that's what audiences will latch onto and did latch onto in the very beginning. So, while it's not the best film I have ever seen, and certainly not the best Disney film, there are aspects of it that make it a Disney classic. It's not perfect, but I still recommend watching it.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep in mind, there are bad things about it, and just keep in mind that the Bella Notte scene is the middle of the film, so you do have to sift through a little bit of it. But give it a watch and let us know what you think.
Mm-hmm. And if you're not a dog lover, I probably would recommend not really watching this film then, because it's full of dogs and it demonizes cats, so you probably won't enjoy it.
Then again, Cats and Dogs did that, and I have to say this is better than Cats and Dogs. So.
Well, of course, anything's better than Cats and Dogs. Yeah. But
anyway, so that was Lady and the Tramp. It wasn't perfect, but it was certainly a good film for the time. Next up, we have Lady and the Tramp 2, Scamp's Adventure. And let me say, I haven't seen this film. I never intended to see this film. So we will see if it's good or not next time.
Mm-hmm.
I do not have high hopes, but then again, we have seen Cinderella 3 and Bambi 2 are good.
Yeah, but, some actual effort was put into those. So
we will check into that next time. Until then, thank you guys for watching this episode of the Disney Debate.
Okay.
If you have any comments, criticisms, suggestions, or Disney movie suggestions that don't fall under main Disney canon, or that we've just simply overlooked for some reason, please let us know in the comments thread at blip.tv/Media Meltdown, or you can follow us at twitter.com/ZenithRule and twitter.com/EphraimTRabbit, or you can follow us at Facebook at facebook.com/ZenithRule, facebook.com/Kat Mac, or you can go to our Facebook groups, facebook.com/The Disney Debate, or you can follow me at facebook.com/TeamDieZenith, and you can get all the updates for the Disney Debate podcast and everything that's going on there, and you can chat with us, and we love interaction, so let us know what you think of the podcast or Disney films in general. But until then, I'm Zenith Rule.
And I am Kat Mac /EphraimTRabbit/Kat T Critic.
And we will see you guys next time.
TTFN, ta-ta for now.
Thank you for watching the Media Meltdown. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. And if you like what you see, show your support on the Patreon page at patreon.com/Media Meltdown. See you all next time on the Media Meltdown.